Coming under the microscope in today's GI Joburg review is what I consider a gem of the O-ring line. It's the Action Sailor Navy Frogman from the 30th anniversary GI Joe Commemorative Collection 1964 to 1994. Gold GI Joe logo looking very regal on this little box and lovingly reproduced painted artwork of the original 12-inch accessory pack. Of course, in keeping with Joe in the 90s, it touts that the torpedo shoots, and that the attack sled is included. So the sled had an upgrade from the 60s Sea Sled to now being an attack sled. Amazing what a little spring-fire missile launcher will do. I think you got my point, Moneypenny. Okay, let me just make it clear up top that I was humming the Bond theme right the way through this review. Black wetsuits, spear guns, and sea sleds conjure up all that good stuff from classic 007 underwater action. I rewatched Thunderball the other night, in fact. Not as good as I'd hoped, but all the practical underwater stuff will always be bloody impressive. Anyway, toy! The mission statement puts us in the picture. This is a series of 4 commemorative action figures capturing the classic 12-inch Armed Forces branches in the then modern style of the O-ring 3 3/4 inch. We've got the soldier, the sailor, the candlestick maker, the marine, and the pilot. There's even a signed note from the president of Hasbro. Legit. The file card is a hoot. No name, no rank, no birthplace, or any personal information really. Just a fat slab of boasting. They make no bones about the fact that he clearly wrote it himself. My best bit. I've personally held the record for sinking more ships than the entire 3rd Fleet. And that's on a bad day. What a rater! The instructions are printed safely on the box back, far away from where the blister is torn away, and that's great. There is some assembly required, basic stuff really, and instructions like these seem patronizing even for a kid. We swing open the box flap to reveal a toy! A glorious toy diver loosely held in a plastic bubble. Those were the days, my friends. This guy has rattled around in there so much, his flesh paint has marked up the inside of the blister. And what's more, the attack sled has seemingly developed a patina of dust inside a sealed bubble. Could it be? Or is this some sign of plastic degradation? It's a mystery. There is so much text on this box. It is staggering. Plenty to read while you're on the bog. But we're not here to read. Let's pull this sucker out and play like it's 1964. No tape on the box flap means it's work of a moment to pull out the tray in that oh so familiar red backing. The blister looks pretty well sealed, so our mystery dust is looking to still be a mystery. After making a few incisions and sliding the contents out, my Action Sailor set is free! It's a deluxe figure and vehicle, and in that sense reminds me a bit of the insane value Tundra Ranger Stalker was. And he didn't even come in a box. But we see a hallmark of 90s Joes here. Weapons trees! Sprue number 1 has the top half of the sled, a projectile and the speargun, and yes, that chalky substance is present. Easy enough to rub it away with my finger, just a bit of a pain. I want a mint and seal box toy to feel squeaky clean, damn it. Fortunately, the plastic beneath doesn't look or feel degraded. And yay for the new accessories! Sea sleds were a popular item for many diver figures in ARA, but I don't think any were made up from as many separate parts or were quite as large as this one. Sprue 2 has the bottom half of the sled, the 2 halves of the air tanks, and the underwater lamp. And plenty of what I'm going to call mint lint. Next, it's the included BFG, which gets a pass from me as it actually forms part of the sled and is almost completely inconspicuous. Why almost, you ask? Well, we'll get into that. The fins are done up in black, but are actually a sneaky reuse of Eco Warrior Deep Six's fins. Honestly, I've no problem with that. Both of these gents have massive feet, and when you find a pair that fit, you get them, no matter who else wears them. The included leaflet is one I'm familiar with from my youth. It was the first time I laid eyes on the whale. I could not believe something like that could exist. The order form was always going to taunt me, until I saw somewhere in the fine print, only available in the United States. What a tease! Another tease was trying to figure out who the mystery figure was. It didn't look like anything I'd ever clapped eyes on to that point. But I believe it was the 1984 Hooded Cobra Commander. That boy was a mail away offer for forever. Once you've nipped off the sprues, it's time for the quickest vehicle assembly of the line. I'm not even looking at the instructions. Push the two halves together, you may feel a satisfying click. Line the launcher tabs up with the slots in the sled. In you go. Next, orientate the classic keyed projectile to the launcher and slide in until you hear a click. Blasted 30-year-old toy? Why won't you click? Come on. There. Got it. And it is as far in as it goes, cause voila, she fires. And this is my gripe with the sled. Why oh why can't the projectile sit flush instead of drawing attention to itself as a big dumb missile? Well, at least it's the same color, so there's that. The air tank attaches to the figure in the classic way, and the softer plastic accessory sits all the way into the back port, which is awesome! Amazing how something as simple as that took O-Ring Joe practically its entire run to implement, and I wish there were more examples of this. I always lamented backpacks that sit just a bit too far away from a figure's back. The lamp is another reuse part, this time from Wetsuit 1986, but it's a thoughtful inclusion and the callback to the accessory in the 1960s pack. The Speargun may be a new piece, but it's a classic. Very uncomplicated design, and the smooth grip means it slides into the hand easy. The fins attach very securely, almost a snap fit. And the hose, while looking fiddly on camera perhaps, really isn't. It's perfectly flexible and attaches very securely to the air tanks, leaving a loose fit to the face. But that's fine by me. It would be a shame if it was a struggle to get that post in, and would most likely cause some breakages. Lovely engineering all around on this guy. But he was not untouched by the ravages of time, even sealed in his bubble. Aside from the mint lint, the adhesive sticking his transparent plastic to his mask had decayed, and the clear piece was no longer attached. Fortunately, it was still rattling around in the box, and 2 minuscule dabs of superglue later, we were back in business. I did want to make sure my glue job was watertight though, as I hadn't applied glue right the way around. Submersion in a bit of water didn't allow any access, but I wanted to know that the seal could handle water at pressure. Especially before I take this guy into the open seas, where a loose piece of transparent plastic could be lost in split seconds. But fortunately the piece remained in position and did not allow any water in. Looks like your mask is correctly fitted after all these years, sailor. Now that he's ready for his location shoot, we can admire the subtle details of this guy. Not grabbing any attention with day-glow neon, his sculpt is flying low under the radar for a 90s guy, but he's seriously good. Zippers, harness, weight belt, sheathed knife. I love the exposed hands and feet, punctuating what on so many other divers would be gloves and booties, oftentimes in the same mold color as the rest of the wetsuit. The flesh tone really accentuates the extremities, and ironically, is a very unique and rare thing to see in the O-Ring line. His right hand is sculpted with a trigger finger. It's not designed to go into any triggers that I'm aware of, but it's interesting to see the innovation of it here. If GI Joe had continued for another year or two, we may have seen this and other lasting changes making appearances. We'll never know now. I think that is a retro depth gauge. It's a nice sculpted inclusion. The weight belt is excellently sculpted with 6 weights, and the torso, while barrel-chested, is not absurdly so like some of the other commemorative set figures. He is of course possibly wearing a very thick wetsuit and harness for his air, so I find these proportions to be good. The legs are also well handled, powerful swimmer physique, but nevertheless a very form-fitting suit. And still digging those exposed feet. Phelps, eat your heart out. Torpedo who? The clear plastic used in the mask is really nice. A jewel in the crown, and allows for a hint of character behind a very practical mask, and let's face it, it's something that regular O-Ring Joes just had not achieved up to this point. It was as late as 1992 before we got a clear piece on Deep 6, but that was still a hell of a weird look that I'm sure puts people off the figure. And I'm not counting Deep 6 84 because that was a dome, and not a plastic viewplate set into a plastic mask. But on the Commemorative edition, it's handled perfectly. And what's more, an added dab of flesh tone peeking out between the bottom of the mask and the hood is really earning this figure an A for effort. In an era where it was not uncommon for blatant missed paint apps, here is a very subtle paint addition that bears testimony to this figure being something altogether special. The gear is terrific. Fins, standard. But everything else? This figure comes with a vehicle! The single plastic color initially bugged me, but the cool electric blue looks great outside glinting in the sun, I'm sure you'll agree. And if you were so inclined, it would be easy and hopefully fun to bring out the details with some paint. I love that little sonar display, and the switches and dials and buttons. That stuff is always a treat. The BFG is the hidden accessory of the set, and can tuck away as a piece of the sled, or make for a handheld weapon for doing some real damage. The trigger is a little too thick for the figure, but the foregrip goes into his hand comfortably. And after all these years, that spring is as strong as ever, for anyone who actually cares. The underside of the sled is sleek but bears some appropriate sculpting, rudders, lines, contours, and that gorgeous electric blue glinting in the glorious sun. The hose is unique and more flexible than the standard black tubing. It nevertheless feels sturdy and has a great fit. The tanks are simple but adequate. Maybe molded in silver wouldn't have been a bad choice if it wasn't sold on the same damn sprue as everything else. The lamp, take it or leave it, but more accessories, more options, I'll never complain. And the Speargun is elegant, simple, unique, and I really enjoy how no frills it is. Some of the underwater weapons were out of control, man. And that's his gear. Tight package, nothing extraneous, all business, and I am a fan. So this figure represents an interesting talking point. By all accounts, the Commemorative collection did not sell well. To this day, you can buy these figures mint in sealed box for around $20 US. As far as I'm concerned, this figure is excellent, and it represents one of the most realistic GI Joe figures ever created in the classic 82 to 94 line. But 12-inch Joe fans didn't snatch him up, and neither did the kids who were buying Joes in the 90s. It's easy to be an armchair critic of the switch to vibrant colors and gimmickry that characterized the 90s, but this figure and its failure to captivate the buying market does point to how a realistic military toy just couldn't compete with all that noise. I'm not complaining, however. I regard this figure as a true hidden gem of the GI Joe line, and the fact that I could treat myself to a sealed version in 2022 for a paltry $20 is one of life's little delights. I hope you can too, dear viewer. Assuming this massively popular review doesn't spike the price through the stratosphere. Jokes! Yo Joe. Berg!